There are many obstacles that can block the path to a successful software project. When you come across one, it helps to think like a seasoned hiker and follow the trail marked by blue blazes around the problem so that you can get back on course and keep moving forward. Welcome to Blue Blazes Podcast. I'm your host for the journey, Jay Tower, and I'm a partner and principal consultant at Trailhead Technology Partners. In this series, we talk with industry experts who share their best tips for avoiding the pitfalls on the path to successful software projects. My guest on this episode of Blue Blazes is Maddy Montaquila, a senior product manager at Microsoft on the .NET team. Over the years, Maddy has helped shape Xamarin, .NET MAUI, and now .NET Aspire. Listeners in the Boston area can also find Maddy singing at local venues with her band Big Rav. In this episode, Maddy and I dig into .NET Aspire, what it is, what problems it solves, and why it's not just for microservices gurus. We talk about how Aspire aims to preserve the simplicity of hitting F5 in Visual Studio, even in today's cloud-native distributed app world. We explore the Aspire dashboard, extensibility points, its surprisingly powerful AI features, and where the platform is headed next. If any of that sounds interesting, you won't want to miss my conversation with Maddy. Hey, Maddy, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's really great to have you. I'm excited for this conversation about Aspire. As you know, the theme of the podcast is talking about things that make software projects more successful, and I think .NET Aspire is the perfect fit for that theme.
Yes. Oh, yes. It totally is.
So to start us out, why don't you tell me a little bit about what is .NET Aspire and what problem is it trying to solve?
Yeah. Currently the official sentence for Aspire is it's tools, templates, and packages for building insert adjective here. Is kind of the way I've been describing it app. I like to say modern, but I also think observable, predictable, things that scale, things that have microservices or not. Any of these things fit with Aspire. And it's 4 parts. And all of them are interchangeable. You can kind of plug and play as much Aspire as you want. The most key part of Aspire is what we call the app host, which is basically Docker Compose like on crack. It's typed, it's written in C#. So you have IntelliSense and you can do add database, dot with reference, parentheses, and pass types and objects. And it takes away the YAML kind of grossness. Yeah. And not only does it manage your containers, but it manages your projects and other executables. So we know .NET folks, big like .NET backend, and maybe they have a Blazor front end or a JavaScript front end, or they have a different API in a different language. Aspire can orchestrate all of those things, and then also spin up the containers and the microservices. And so that's really the core part when I think most people think about it. But it also we have what we call integrations, which for the orchestration part turn things on, but for your app part, they wire things up. And so you can right click add Aspire orchestration to your .NET API, and we'll automatically turn on logging, telemetry, using OpenTelemetry, and the service resiliency and various things. And so when you F5 locally, now you have Aspire orchestrating, and then you have all this data now, and we show it to you in this really cool dashboard. Nice. So I'd say like a third of the people you ask about Aspire are like, it's a dashboard. And that's where they get that.
Yeah.
And then there's the deployment side, which is a whole other ball game. But it's the more, it's currently maturing, but Aspire deployment is taking everything that we know about your app because you've defined it in C# locally and hoisting it into whatever cloud makes sense, however that makes sense. Okay. So, yeah, lots of things going on.
Yeah, lots of little pieces there. So the insert adjective here that you mentioned, the one I've seen the most recently that you all are using is cloud native. But I think you could use distributed application. Like what's your preference for the adjective there? Jay here. Just a quick break in the conversation to share how Trailhead can help you tackle your toughest business challenges. When you're navigating uncharted technology terrain, Trailhead creates custom software solutions that put you back on the path to success. Ready for the next step? Get started with an expert consultation at trailheadtechnology.com/offer. That's trailheadtechnology.com/offer. Now back to the conversation.
Yeah, cloud native. I personally, I have never considered myself a cloud native developer unless the only people I think of as cloud native developers are people who like get Kubernetes, like really get it, you know?
Uh-huh.
And so I am allergic to it as a phrase because I don't think me, as someone who builds a website with a database and an API, is a cloud native developer, even though that's exactly what Aspire is for.
Yeah.
So my favorite word is probably modern. Just because that encompasses to me like all of the things. There's services in different languages and all over the place. And I don't know. But I like today's, you know, which kind of goes along modern, but I also like observable. I think that's the more actual meaning. Apps that you can develop and see what's going on with them.
It's really hard to summarize something into just a word or a few words, isn't it?
Yeah. About once a week, David Fowler or someone or I will go into ChatGPT and we'll be like, summarize Aspire. And we'll come up with a new sentence and we'll be like, okay, so this week it's this. This is what our fake PM told us this week.
ChatGPT PM. So I think a lot of people might sort of associate Aspire with things like microservices and distributed systems. But you are just describing, you know, if I'm a developer of a monolithic .NET application, maybe there's a front end, an API, and a database.
Yeah.
When I deploy that nowadays, like you said, a modern developer, I'm probably going to deploy that to the cloud. I'm probably going to deploy that to a bunch of different resources. There might be some CDN where the front end lives. There might be app service or Azure function or something where the API layer lives, database, monitoring, caching, right? Like all these pieces. And that's where you really get into the modern application development. So how does Aspire help like a monolithic, someone who might think of themselves as a monolithic developer that's trying to deploy things to the cloud in that scenario?
So the actual developer part of being a monolithic app developer, when you clone a repo and you can hit F5 and everything just kind of works, that is what Aspire tries to preserve for this cloud native or distributed or whatever dev, right? So you'll feel less of the magic there if you are someone who has one mono repo and you clone it into Visual Studio and everything's .NET and the solution just works, you know? Where Aspire starts to feel magic for monolith developers is the turning stuff on, for sure, but also easing the pain of unmonolithing or adding something in a non-monolithic manner. Like I know you do the conference circuit too, so you've probably seen the modular monolith talks. I know like Layla Porter does a really good one, or just all of those, like how to preserve the vibe of a monolith without the limitations of it. Aspire really helps that process because you can start piecemealing things off without completely hemorrhaging your entire developer experience, which is traditionally what you have to do when you start ripping open your monoliths. So if you're someone who's trying to modernize, it's a good point for that. But on the other hand, like, you know, just turning on OTel, that alone to me is enough to Aspirify anything. So and then
OpenTelemetry for the uninitiated, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. OpenTelemetry.
Yeah.
We made a bet. We were like, well, we have to figure out what everyone's going to use for telemetry, and we'll use that. And Microsoft kind of in general bet on OpenTelemetry, and we were totally right. So it's a standard for traces, metrics, logs, and how those things are communicated and how to parse them and show them. And so when you have OTel in a JavaScript front end talking to OTel in a .NET backend, they all speak the same language, and it's amazing.
Yes. So tell me, what is, as you go around talking to different groups about Aspire, what is the one most common misunderstanding that you wish you could clear up?
There are a lot. Originally, it's changed. Originally, it was that you couldn't use Aspire to deploy, so you couldn't use Aspire at all. And that was because we talked so much about Aspire as a deployment tool. Also, you can see my dog in the background. Sorry. People were like, well, I don't go to Azure Container Apps, which is what our original deployment story was. So I can't use it. And so we totally over pivoted with this. Aspire's like for developers, it's dev first, it's code, it's this, it's that. And that's been great because now everybody knows they can use it. Except the most common misconception now I think that I hear is, well, it's not production ready, or I have to re-platform it. And how am I supposed to re-platform on something that's, not ready for production? And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I have a hard time answering it because production ready is not.
Yeah. Doesn't even kind of make sense for what it is.
Right. But that's because it's so hard to describe. I mean, we're 10 minutes in and I'm still describing what the thing is, right? So that's the whole messaging problem.
Yeah. It is a little hard to describe. Well, along those lines, I guess maybe I know you are a newer addition to the Aspire team, coming from the Maui team, but so you weren't around at the very beginning, but I wonder if you know what the origin story of Aspire is. That might help maybe form people's understanding of it.
I do. It was so I joined about a year ago, and about a year and some odd before the MVP summit in 2023. Oh my god. They .NET obviously great for the whole stack, but really like the performance and the scalability of just like the APIs and that whole web, like ASP.NET Core, that whole layer is a huge selling point of .NET. And so we were like, why don't we have something like Java has Spring, right? Why don't we have something that makes it like stupidly easy to get to the cloud? And they were like, okay, go figure something out, and we'll talk about it at MVP Summit, and we'll get some feedback, and then we'll like start. And that was how Aspire started. And it really started as there were a bunch of internal and external facing projects that had happened solving similar issues. So Project Tie was a really big thing a couple years before, and that kind of became the godfather to Aspire. There's also this internal thing called R9 that was APIs, and Azure has ARM, the Azure resource whatever words. And so Aspire tried to kind of culminate all of that. My favorite Aspire origin story is that there was no deployment for a long time. It was just local dev. Right. And bootstrapping and everything. And at one point, someone in our leadership team was like, you cannot call something cloud if you can't put it on the cloud. And they were
that's a pretty good point.
Oh. So that's how the deployment started. And that's when, the team partnered with the Azure folks and was like, can we partner and just tell people to go there? So I think the opinionated part was really the beginning of Aspire, and it's developed into a lot more than that. But yeah.
Well, that's the perfect transition to my next question, which is, as you mentioned, Aspire started out primarily focused on the development experience, and over the versions that has expanded. And maybe it's not like it doesn't make sense to talk about it, quote unquote, in production, but it's got a lot of different parts and pieces. So what parts of it do you think make the smoothest transition to that, higher environment story?
Yeah. The way that we now look at Aspire is a set of like extensibility points. So it's not a re-platform. That's another misconception, is you have to lift and shift something onto Aspire, or to rip Aspire out would be like detrimental to your stack. Because you'll never rip Aspire out once you have it. But I also know, I am a developer at heart, I know how terrified people are of locking themselves into things. Like, that is a very normal fear. So with deployment in particular, because the app host is just a .NET project, it sits on your box, you can put it in it's source controllable, but it's not something that gets deployed, right? It is merely an orchestrator. It knows a lot about your application, and it knows everything, and how everything is related and how they all talk to each other. And so what we want to do is, and what we are doing, is making it a very easy thing for you to translate into whatever makes sense. So you put the inputs into the app host and you say, okay, I'm going to pull in, one thing we're talking about is how you could pull in Terraform modules, right? So you pull in the Terraform module beforehand in the app host. And then during your CI pipeline, you can translate or project, or whatever word you want to use, compile. We talk about it as like the compiler, right? All of those things into whatever the asset, intermediary language, HCL, YAML that you already use. And then that you deploy the way that you already deploy it today. And so the idea is that we just kind of fit into the existing structure that you have, and we give you extensibility points to streamline those things, but we don't, we're not writing the next Pulumi or Terraform. We're not crazy enough to do that.
Right.
Yet.
Yet. That's a good,
maybe one day.
That's
Never
a good
say never.
caveat. Yeah. You never know where these things go, right?
Yeah. If you told me we were building a CLI a year ago, I would say, wow, I really had to win a fight with Fowler. And then after that, I would be like, also, there's no way. But we're doing it.
So you mentioned a couple of things that I want to drill down on a little bit. When you're building an Aspire solution, you have a couple of kind of like special projects that are in your solution, the app host and the .aspire project. Can you talk about the role that each of those plays in the application?
So the app host is the Aspire orchestrator, right? Like that's the meat and bones of it. It is a standard C# file with a CS proj and all the cruft that comes along with a .NET project, but it is a builder pattern the same way that you would use the builder in an ASP.NET API, and you do builder.addDatabase and then builder.addAPI with reference database. And we give you all of the primitives and the extension points in the builder so people can build their own integrations and say, hey, builder.add my weird type of internal auth that we use, or .add, I don't know. I built a custom Godot integration to run the game engine, right? And linked that up in my Aspire app a couple weeks ago. Just in the evening, I was like, I wonder if this would work. And it did.
Yeah.
Like, that's cool. So that's the app host. And the app host, you can pull in the integrations. We call them hosting integrations. And those are things that will automatically spin up a Redis container in Docker or Podman with the things turned on and the service discovery ready to go, so that you can just add that pass that as a reference into your project, and your project understands how to talk to it. You can do anything, any container, any executable, but we give you these integrations that bootstrap those things, and they're just our opinions, so you can change them and edit them whenever that makes sense. And then on the project side, we have what we call client integrations, and those are the things that turn on the service discovery. They wire things up, they bootstrap Redis, etc. And those are also just NuGet packages, right? So those are just telling the client, your code, how to talk to the app host. The second project we add is the service defaults project. And that is, again, just a C# file where we go in and we turn on things that have existed in .NET for a while that we don't turn on by default. And so you'll see, if you click through it, it's just, add OpenTelemetry, add logging. We extended kind of the .NET service discovery mechanism in Aspire. That's the only real custom new .NET stuff that's in there, but it's still in system, whatever. So it's not Aspire specific. And the nice thing about it being a C# file is you just comment out what you don't want, or you extend, or you overwrite, or if you use a third-party telemetry provider instead of OTel, you just swap that in. And so that's why we give them to you as two separate projects. For me, I hate that we have to add two projects to your app, because I feel like that's such overhead. If you, at some point, go and talk to Damian Edwards about .NET Run, app.cs, the single file thing, that's my dream, is we add two files to your project, the app host and the extensions, and then that's it. But that's getting
future version.
Yeah,
maybe.
Exactly.
Future addition to the roadmap, possibly. After you finish rewriting Terraform.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Very good. So .NET Aspire is the name of it, full name of the project, right? But it doesn't just allow you to do .NET projects. You can do Node, Python, other things. Can you talk a little about that? Yeah.
I think the .NET Aspire name kind of came about because it was part of the .NET team and brand and everything, and we thought, like, oh yeah, let's make this a .NET thing, until we started to hold it and it was actually built and we saw people using it, and we were like, oh my god, locking this to .NET is not it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. And it's always worked with all these other things, we just never talked about it as such. And so, yeah, JavaScript and Python, we have the most first party stories for, but I've seen people using it with Go and Rust and, insert language of the week here. Part of the reason we're doing it is because we want to grow Aspire. Another part of the reason we're doing it is because, as I'm sure you know, being in the community for a while, there are misconceptions of .NET that have lingered long past when they are true. I still talk to people who think that it is Windows only and closed source, which makes me want to rip my hair out. But Aspire has this opportunity to go into new places that people who would like turn their nose up at .NET because developers are developers and we all act like we're the coolest people ever. We can go into these places, and then at some point, someone will be like, "Is this .NET? Oh, I didn't run. Oh, wait, what?" The same way that Docker kind of made Go cool again. And so we're looking at a bunch of different ways to hide the .NET isms. I've been joking about it, or like Trojan horse it, or whatever you want to call it, including like, could you write the app host itself in a different language instead of .NET, instead of C#? And then under the hood, it's just the .NET stuff. We project it or whatever. But then a JavaScript developer will go to extend it and build their own custom integration or whatever it is and be like, oh, I have to write this in C#. Oh, and then they'll look at the docs and be like, this is what C# looks like? Oh, that's not actually that bad. Versus where it is now, you see it and you're like, oh, well, I'm not a .NET developer. That's not for me.
That's not for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you can't answer this, we can cut this out. But are we likely to see the branding move from .NET Aspire more towards just Aspire?
If you if you're a good internet sleuth and you click around and you see some accounts and things and YouTubes, and not going to get too specific, but yes, I think you can kind of see where we're going. There are a lot of steps to get there. We can't just like completely rebrand. We can't just like decide we're TypeScript, right? So we can't pull the trigger and just do it. But that is definitely where we want to go.
That's a direction that we can look out for, maybe.
Yeah. And you'll see just informally, like we've stopped calling it .NET Aspire. We still call it that on the blog because that's the official name of the thing, but we're getting there.
Interesting.
We're getting there.
All right. We broke news here, maybe.
Maybe.
So .NET Aspire, or Aspire, let's call it, is on a slightly different release schedule than .NET itself. .NET major version is the same number as Aspire, but Aspire gets its own minor version, releases on kind of its own life cycle. Can you talk a little bit, besides branding, can you talk a little bit about why that's important?
Yeah. Well, we are just giving everyone headaches internally. And so you mentioned it came from Maui, and Maui was another one that we had to fight uphill to not release yearly. And because iOS and Android, Maui, which is mobile for those of the uninitiated of you who haven't felt the pain of mobile development, iOS and Android do whatever they want whenever they want. So we couldn't say we could only release in November and service when appropriate. And so Aspire's been now feeling this. And they're like, oh, how did the Maui team do it? And I'm like, I fought with you guys for this from the other sides for years. Anyways, salt aside. Like, yeah, we release every 6-ish weeks. Everything's open source. You can follow it. We start tagging things usually after the prior release has gone out. So when we're recording this, it's going to be a bit before this airs. We're tagging 9.4 right now. We're looking at what we want to do for that, and that will come out at some point in July, probably around when this episode comes out. But we slip based on testing and we decide what we want in the release before we pick the date, and then we pick the date as a best guess. And the reason we do that is because the cloud is always changing. There's new concepts and new AI things and whatever that we have to kind of try and keep up with and adjust. But B, we're experimenting a lot, and we're slapping the preview flag on everything. And we think that people should use it before we commit it to, permanent Aspire glory. And to do that, we're shipping minor releases with preview features, and we're fixing stable things in the minor releases, but we're also tweaking other things. We're adding new things. We try not to break stuff. Occasionally we can't help it. Aspire is still really young. It's only a year old, so it is hard. But for us, it's all about the experimentation and the adjusting and learning and making sure we're actually building something useful.
Version numbers are always hard, but somebody coming new to Aspire might think version 9.3, oh, this is super well established and stable.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's not.
We joke about it. We're like, maybe, but then at the same time, Apple's about to change all their like operating system numbers to be based on the year or something. So I don't think version numbers mean anything.
Yeah. Yep. Well, famously, Microsoft has gone through those phases too, right? It's the year, no, it's the number, it's a brand.
Oh yeah.
So I know we're early now that when we're recording this in the 9.4 life cycle, but what do you think is we're most likely to see in that version at this point? Can you make some guesses and prognostications?
Oh yeah. There's a couple different areas that we try to like pick, we call them, big rocks or whatever the product word you want to use for it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so for where my focus has been primarily right now as part of this hiding.net thing is the CLI experience and making Aspire work the same and well, no matter where or what kind of developer you are. Mm-hmm. So that means if you are a native JS person who's always in VS Code on a Mac, right? Like it feels like it could fit in a tool in your tool chain. And so one of the things we're working on this release for 9.4 is the CLI right now is a .NET Global tool, which for a .NET developer is a totally normal thing. We're looking at how to release it on other things. Like maybe it'll just be curl a script and call it a day, but we're going down the homebrew path and we're looking at what it would take for us to release on that. And so there's prior art at Microsoft, like AZD, the Azure Developer CLI, the new Azure Foundry stuff, Foundry Local, like all of those things have really good CLI distribution mechanisms. And so that's kind of boring from a feature perspective, but that's where a lot of my brain has been at. On the orchestrator and like the actual syntax and app host side, everything's AI. We were talking about this before we started recording. Everything's AI all the time. Mm-hmm. But we want to make it equally easy with Aspire to do your AI development that your bosses are making you do without having to reinvent the wheel every time something new comes out. So there's a lot of exploration there with what do you add a model? Do you add OLAMA? What does it look like? Is it Postgres or is it EF Core? Like what's the comp here? Mm-hmm. And so we're looking at that, which I think is going to end up being very helpful for developers using Aspire because we're all being asked to build AI into everything now. And making that suck less is a very noble goal of ours. So that's up there. And then on the deployment side, there's a lot happening. And right now we have the preview, we're calling them publishers, but the idea is instead of just translating the app host to JSON or to whatever ACA Azure Container Apps can digest, we now have the ability to do Docker Compose and then Kubernetes. And so Docker Compose was an easy first step for us because it's very easy to compare and run and test. And if you run the Docker Compose file and it works, then you know the Aspire publisher works. But we're looking at that model and what extensibility points we need to put into that so that you can build your own deployment things when the time comes. But that also we can do the internal deployment tool, which is what we've been focusing on because it's incredibly complicated. That Microsoft uses. So in a service for Office or something could use Aspire to deploy. Mm-hmm. We're working on that, adding whatever we learn and we need from that internal deployment mechanism back into the stack. And then we're going to build up the Kubernetes and Terraform is my big one that I want. And whatever else, those experiences around those extensibility points. So a lot of that stuff will come in 9.4, but you won't, it's groundwork. It's groundwork laying.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's going to be a fun groundwork release. I think 9.2 was also another release where we put a bunch of pieces into place.
That's
and
interesting.
Then 9.3 was like, whoa.
It's almost like you guys have maybe unintentionally or intentionally fallen into kind of a TikTok pattern where there's groundwork and then launching new functionality.
We're acting like a mature product team.
I know. How about that? So you brought up AI. There's a actually useful AI feature that went out in 9.3, I believe.
Yep.
Can you talk about that?
So James Newton King, who is an absolute genius, and he lives in the complete opposite time zone that I do. He called me one day and he's like, "Hey, I've been shopping around this video. I put this together. I have like a really basic Copilot-esque thing in the dashboard, and it reads your logs and tells you what's going on." And I was like, this is actually kind of this is kind of useful. And we've all been like, "No AI, get it off." Like, we'll help you build your AI, but we don't want to be the AI people,
Right.
And I saw it, I was like, "Oh no, this is good." And so I went to Fowler and Damien and I was like, "Guys, I think I know what the build feature is going to be, like the thing, right?" And they were like, no AI. And then I was like, "Just call it, just when James calls you, just be nice." And then they both watched it and were like, "No, this is actually good."
Yeah.
So most of the work since then has honestly been the logistics of trying to ship something as part of the Copilot like stack. And James refining the prompt and the UI and all those things. But the premise itself hasn't changed. And the premise is Copilot, Aspire knows all of these things about your app. We should just be able to give it to Copilot, and Copilot can go search through your logs and traces for you and point out where it thinks the error is happening.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's amazing.
Yeah. Particularly in a just complicated or distributed system. How cool that something can read your logs and then point you in the right direction. What a huge time saver.
Especially for me locally, like I'll be like, "Why is this not working?" And I'll read the error, and the error will have some generic message. And so now I can ask Copilot, I'll be like, and it will go through, it'll be like, "Well, this happened after it talked to the database, but before the cache cleared and blah, blah, blah." And I can kind of see when. And so that for me, at least, even if it doesn't get it right, it gives me a good place to look, which is better than anything.
That's cool. Well done putting an actual useful AI feature into a thing.
That's all I want to say anymore. I'm like, we build good AI. I love the new Copilot in VS Code is great, I have to say. I have to stop complaining about it because agent mode is unbelievable. For sure. But I would like to say that Aspire has the best use of AI in the dev tools.
It's got to be up there.
Yeah.
All right, Maddy, we've been talking about Aspire, but I want to ask you my last question I ask every guest, maybe the hardest question on the podcast, which is on this theme of making software projects more predictably successful. Besides Aspire, what other topics or what other people should we be talking to?
Yeah, I have AI on the brain. And one thing that I've been keeping an eye on is testing, especially full integration, end-to-end UI testing. And my mobile background, I was traumatized by that because mobile UI testing is like a landmine-filled adventure.
So hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And so at Build, Jeff Fritz actually did a demo of Aspire and Playwright. And Playwright has been doing a ton of really cool stuff in that space. Playwright in general, I'm sure you've either talked to them or had them on the pod or whatever, but predictable. What's more predictable than testing, right?
Yeah.
Well, adding AI to it, let's make it completely unpredictable. So I think that is a really cool unexplored path right now. Just how to test apps, today's apps that are crazy and all over the place and nothing's alive at the right time. And I know Debbie over in Playwright is absolutely a doll, and she runs a very cool community Discord that I've been copying. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah,
I think
that's a great one. We've talked about testing, but not about end to end and not about Playwright yet. So that would be perfect.
You got to get her. That Playwright's cool. As someone who loves to complain about testing, I have to eat my words with Playwright because it's cool. So
I think developers understand unit testing a lot more now than, let's say, 10, 15 years ago, but end to end still hard, especially in platforms like mobile.
Yeah.
So
and it just becomes more and more important as we keep building crazier stuff.
For sure. Great suggestion and very helpful insights into Aspire. Thanks for your expertise and your time.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for letting me aspire all over your podcast.
It was great to have you. Thanks, Maddy.
Appreciate it.
That's the end of this Blue Blazes podcast. If you're interested in hearing more conversations like this one with industry experts focused on how to make software projects more predictably successful, make sure to subscribe. Trailhead can be found online at trailheadtechnology.com, on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Until next time, thanks for listening.